Yep, we're recording. Hello, Vinita. How are you
Hi.
doing?
Hi, Gautam. I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Thank you so much for doing this. I know it's been it was kind of short notice, but thank you so much. I'm just getting back into the podcast game, and
No
it's
problem.
always great to have fun conversations. We've always had fun conversations outside of um, outside of a formal setting, but why not have it in such a setting as well?
Yeah, totally.
But okay, so let me a little bit of background. Uh, so Vinita and I work together in freshman, and I feel like I'm going through all my freshman colleagues because I just did one with Manvi. Now I'm doing one
Mm.
with Vinita, and Vinita was a content writer, but she was a press. And in fact, I think all your life you've been in content and creating content, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I did see a brief stint as a business manager uh, many years back, but
Yeah,
I think that's something you quickly jumped out of, right?
yeah. I think that was like my ambitions of moving into corporate,
Uh-huh.
but that was short lived. Then came back to creative.
Okay, but I'd really love to know more about like what I mean. Have you always been into writing or the creative side, and then what like made you say, okay, this is it. This is where I want to be now.
Yeah, I think it was serendipitous because I picked up writing back in college. And I did, like I've done my college from Delhi University, and Delhi University, if you know, it is not very good on attendance. So
Uh-huh.
I had all the time, and I could start like a PR internship.
Mhm.
And from there, I started writing press releases, and I think that's where I picked up. I must have been what 19, and since then it has been into writing, into social media, dabbling into copywriting,
Right.
and then now finally into technical writing.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, yeah. And I should mention, not only did we work together in Fresh Menu, but we're also working in the same organization now, although at very different
Right.
places. We're both in Amazon. You're in Canada, and I'm in sunny Barcelona. And hopefully, we get to visit each other's offices sometime once all of this COVID, tides over. But
Absolutely.
yeah, so I want to go back to something you said. You started writing when you were like doing press releases when you were 19.
Hmm.
Wow, that's crazy. But how did you come, meet the people or meet or network or find people who would, give you that outlet?
Yeah, so I started working like writing press releases for work because when you work in a PR, public relation agency, you take care of different accounts. So
Uh-huh.
from there, I was writing press releases. And then when my internship was supposed to get over, all the questions that get flooded in is, like, what next?
Right.
So for that, I reached out to as many media people as I knew.
Mhm.
And I think I must have sent out, those pitch emails we send when
Oh, of course.
uh, I sent it to almost, I think, 100 people, and
Uh-huh.
one responded.
Mhm.
Rest responded saying like sorry, but one positive response I got from this magazine called Hair Magazine. It was a UK based magazine. They were launching in India, and
Right.
she said, I need 100-word piece on some hair extension article. So I was so excited, like going in the remotest area of Delhi on
Uh-huh.
my own, covering the whole event, just for those 100 words. That's how I got my jump start. And since then, I worked with all different magazines in that same umbrella. I
Uh-huh.
also worked with their in-flight magazine, with their niche NRI magazine.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I think that's how
So
I picked
which
up
which one
creative
of those
writing.
did you enjoy the most? Which one of their variety of, contents?
I think hair was a lot of fun because they used to send me on these experientials, where you go try out these different services and
Oh,
then
so
review them.
you got to
Yeah,
basically review and oh, yes, yes.
yeah, that was one. Then the other one was Marwar, where it was for the Rajasthani community.
Mm-hmm.
It was very niche. And then I also ended up writing for Jet Wings.
Mm-hmm.
The airline doesn't exist now, but I wrote like a national story on jewelry. I think that was very interesting. That was like my last stint with them.
For the longest time, I really wanted to do this for a living, just like watch movies and write reviews for it, because I loved when I was growing up. I loved watching movies, and I would have loved, but I'm glad I never pursued it because I'm terrible when it comes to writing. Because it takes me so much effort to sit down and put words that I would not be able to churn out content at the rate that you do, and which I've seen you do at Freshman. Which
Thank you.
which brings me to something very interesting. Don't you feel fatigued? Having, especially when you're in a job that's very like in Freshman, I know that you had to churn out something new almost on, and that was peculiar about Freshman because of the new menu every day. You were churning out new pieces of content on a very regular basis, right? Don't you
Yeah.
feel that fatigue when it comes to writing?
I think fresh menu was like an exception, right? Because the menu was such that you would write different things every day.
Uh-huh.
But creativity is, you cannot be creative under pressure, is what I believe. And
Right.
that's why it fatigues you.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like that there has to be a balance. Like in my current technical writer role, I think I get to be very businessy,
Right.
the way things should be. But then I also have my creative outlet, which is I'm writing my book.
Oh,
So
yes.
that is what gives me a creative outlet, where I can be at my own leisure. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I think hats off to people who do that. It is like people, when I remember when I used to work with an ad agency back in India, it used to be long hours because
Mhm.
there is only so much time in a day, and then you have all these clients who you have to write copy for. So yeah, it can be a bit on the other side, but it depends on what what you're doing for your soul. Does your work give you happiness, or is it your side hustle?
Right, right. I'm really, really excited to talk about your book. But before we do that, I want to ask you, what's your preferred style of writing, or what do you prefer to write?
Very good question. I think I would always love to write creative writing,
Hmm.
but then that doesn't really pay bills. So
I was just gonna ask you. That was my follow-up question. I wanted to be very, very diplomatic about it. Use like, you're not compensated now. But yeah, the bottom line is, you guys get jack shit, right? I mean,
yeah,
I don't think
agree.
uh, uh, any creative professional is paid the buck they're worth.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's I think unless you pursue it with your heart and soul, which I didn't, like at some point I wanted to pursue journalism because I did that. I was a features writer.
Hmm.
But then I knew that, it's going to be a really hard hike up. So I think I settled for something which ties well with the career, which has a scope. So I think technical writing is something that gives me that balance of being acting like a leader at work and also
You know,
working in the same field.
I'm gonna have to hold that against you because of people like you who decided not to pursue journalism. Indian media is at the highest standard that it is at right now. I
Oh, well, I take that as a compliment.
mean, so when you pursue say creative writing,
Hmm,
what are your sources of inspiration? What are some of your
hmm,
favorite authors or someone you go back to? Okay, and an additional question, something that I'm really keen to know is what is that one book that you would read, I don't know,
hmm.
again and again and again, and you don't get bored?
Oh my God, that's a really hard one. Um, I think it depends on different genres. It's not. I really like a range of writers. From
Uh-huh.
classics to Ruskin Bond. Who's
Hmm.
closer home to E.M. Foster, and I think one book that's really hard one. I don't know if I would. Probably my book that I have written. I would read that again and again. I mean,
Of
I do that.
course.
I do look at things I have written and published again and again because I think my relation. It depends on what your relation with book is, right? Like my relationship with book is always seeking. Like I'm always seeking something. Like for example, I'm seeking I want to be a project manager, and then right now I'm reading this book on the unofficial project manager.
Mhm.
So I probably wouldn't read it again once I extracted that knowledge. But creatively, I think I really like you know all of Ruskin Bond's books.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that for me as well, it's well, there's something that I've noticed about my reading pattern or my preferences. They've gone from like long format to short format over the last
Hmm.
I'd say a decade. I used to be completely comfortable to read a novel in like a couple of days time, but now I'm
Hmm.
finding more and more I prefer short stories or shorter format fiction, or even when I consume content online, articles or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't want to like spend so much time, and I can read many and get like this thing. But that's the problem of
Evolution,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Something
also
we
us
call
as
as
a society, right? We are like we are constantly conditioned to consume shorter and shorter
yep.
formats of media.
Right, like, and that's how I don't want to get there too much, but then, that's how in the technical writing field,
Hmm.
the creative side of that is called UX writing, which involves more of micro copy. You have content which is on your devices, right? Like
Right,
you
right.
need it to be creative, but you also need it to perform an action, right?
Hmm.
So more and more evolutionary, and that's what it is. Like, I think, going back to your previous question of inspiration, so I'm taking this course from University of Toronto. It's about writing your novel.
Uh-huh.
And there I learned a very interesting thing. We don't, as creative people, we really miss doing that, is putting structure to our thoughts. So
Hmm.
that was very interesting, like how, for example, you have to achieve a task, right? Like, for example, make coffee. You'll follow a same, like, a process, right? You'll boil water, brew a coffee, etc., etc. But when it comes to writing or creativity, when it comes to, say, painting, like,
Uh-huh.
what's the process you follow, right? So now they're teaching us that there is a beginning, middle, and end, like
Right.
act one, act two, act three, what we call in novel writing. That there needs to be method to this madness. So I think that's like my big takeaway, to put things in structure.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really refreshing to also know that you have to go and actually learn this skill, right? Because
Hmm.
I think an assumption that a lot of people have is it's just something. Oh, this person can write, they can do it all. It still takes work. It still takes a lot of effort to build it to a level where you can, uh, say write professionally, but also say pursue something like writing a novel, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you tell me a little bit more about this novel you're writing? So, what's it about? Do you have a name?
Hmm.
And how far are you into it?
Good question. I'm not going to give you all the details, what the name
Oh,
is.
ooh,
Let's call it Book X.
book
Let's call
X.
it Book X, because the name is very suggestive. So I'm not going to
Uh-huh.
tell you what it's called. But then it's about a character
Oh, it's fiction.
who has. Oh yeah, it's fiction. Yes.
Okay.
So it's about a character who's had a very troubled childhood.
Okay.
She's had her set of problems, etc., and then how she finds solace in escaping her
Uh-huh.
reality,
Okay.
and then until eventually, she moves to a different country, and then realizes, like, that's not what she wanted. So,
Uh-huh.
and then how the story unfolds, the different kind of character she meets. There's a love angle, of course, has to be, it's
Of course.
fiction. And then there is this whole sense of community, that really helps her through.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I think
So, how long
I'm
have
still
you been?
building.
I mean,
Mhm.
when did you start? Where are you at in the stage of writing this book? Where are you
Oh,
at right
well,
now?
I think I started writing this book like almost 5 years ago.
Wow.
But it has been on my desktop because, until like I was mentioning, until I took this course, I did not know about the structure, because we read books, we take it so casually that, oh, but craft also has a structure.
Uh-huh.
So I think thanks to COVID, because I had time at my hand and I could, go online, take up these courses. And I'm in my middle of the book.
Okay.
So I don't know by when it'll be ready, but
Uh-huh.
then, yeah, I'm
Uh,
hoping soon.
Another 5 years? Hope not.
Hope not, because, again, the whole thing to book publishing is, especially in the North American market, it's really difficult to find a publisher. That's why
Uh-huh.
people self-publish most of their books. But that's, I think, yeah, that's another topic for another day.
Mhm.
But
Would
yeah,
you?
let's see where it
But
goes.
very quickly, would you self-publish?
Yeah, I mean, why not? If I'm unable to find somebody who would buy my book,
Uh-huh.
I would self-publish.
Yeah, absolutely, you should. So, how much of this book have you derived from personal experiences versus, say, people you know, or is it, or do you hear of events or read of events and then sort of incorporate it?
Good question. I think yeah. So in writing we call this term called alluding. So I think
Uh-huh.
using personal life, using
Okay.
personal experience to allude to something. But it's like, like most writers, their first book is autobiographical. This is not. The circumstances may look like that, but I think characters are, driven from my real life experiences, and what happens in like a typical writing peer review is that, when you're writing your novel in the course that I'm taking, so you show your book to, different people, different writers, and they will give you their opinion. And I was so surprised that a book which is about somebody who's come from another country appeals to so many people. So I
Mm,
got so excited because you know how it happens when you move to a new country. Your
right.
imposter kicks in and you
Mm.
feel like, oh no, I don't deserve this.
Imposter
But
syndrome.
then
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, so imposter, I feel like, lives in everybody, and that's why I often say that it kicks in. But yeah, I think it was well received, and I'm really excited. And there's this also this common expression they say that, when you should not mess with the writer unless you want to end up in their book. So
Uh-huh. You're taking revenge on all those people who pissed you off, huh?
yeah, you'll kill them. You'll
Writing
kill them in your book.
writing them in and then giving them nasty, nasty. I like it. I like this. I like this
Oh
harmless
god.
form of revenge.
Yeah. Oh
Unless
yeah.
unless your book gets picked up for a movie and then they have this really horrible actor portraying them, yeah, then it's gonna come back and bite you.
Oh no. Yeah, I like how you put it. It's harmless, right? It's like
Harmless, yeah. I mean, and it's
non-violent.
alluding to it, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
person might not even think it's them. They might think it's someone else.
Oh yeah, you'll change the names, you'll change
Change the
how they
names
look,
and
you
you
change the
and nobody,
gender.
yeah, change the gender. Maybe just change the characteristics slightly so there's a little doubt, but not too much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's only them and you who know who that person is.
Do you
So
know?
yeah, it's kind of funny.
Do you know how the book is going to end?
I don't know yet.
Very good.
I'm still figuring it out.
I'm
I
so
have a
glad you
fair
said that.
idea.
I'm really glad because
Why do you
I
say that?
because I used to write short stories and I used
Hmm.
to write and I've always
Hmm.
when I write I write I used to write very rarely, but when I used
Hmm.
to write I used to have a notion or an image in my head and I would write around that and I would almost never know where it's ending up, but somehow it would end up in a very at least for me it was
Hmm.
very satisfactory end to the story. But I think
Hmm.
knowing or assuming that this story has to end this or saying this story has to end a particular way sort of shoehorns you into sort of fitting that ending in, right?
Yeah.
Or fitting that um, fitting that idea in. But
Yeah.
what's it like for you? What you purposefully decided you're not going to decide now how it ends, or you genuinely don't know where the story's taking you?
I don't know. I think I had an idea, and then this move happened for me, and
Mm.
then suddenly I had to change my story angle to include a Canadian angle, because I would eventually release my book in Canada. So I need to appeal to Canadian audiences, right? So that's how my beginning, everything changed. My book started as something else when I had this idea like many years ago, and then it started as a corporate satire. And
Uh,
we've we've had
yeah,
those days. There is so
we've
much
had those
material
days.
to talk about that, and. But then it changed into something else. So the underlying theme I think remains the same. The end message remains the same, but I really don't know, because the characters that I have included now, they're turning out to be really interesting, and I want to build on that. So
Okay,
we'll
you
see.
never know. So you did mention that a huge part of your character's uh, growth or transition into
Hmm.
a form of her later self has to do with her moving to a new place or discovering a new land. And this obviously is something that's drawn from, say, your experience, right?
Yeah,
Moving
yeah,
from India to Canada. And is your move to Canada like your first time abroad, living abroad?
yeah. I mean, I have traveled. I had
Uh-huh.
traveled before, but never lived,
Right. And the travel,
never
once
moved.
you live abroad, you realize that the travel is just like a glimpse, not even doesn't
Oh,
even tell you what life there is
yeah,
like, right?
yeah, yeah.
Th-
It's an
th-
eye wash.
it's an eye wash. And you know what? It's so funny because you would have these people who take these month-long European trips and then come back and
Oh,
lecture you on European life as if, as if they've lived there all their lives.
yeah. You heard all those stories like, oh, you should take a camper van and you should like move.
Uh, yeah, and
Hashtag Euro tripping.
I mean, there's one thing about living in Europe and one thing about traveling through. Traveling through Europe is such a rosy picture versus living in
Hmm.
Europe where it's beautiful. You get to appreciate a lot
Yeah.
of this, but it's real life, you know. It's it's not as rosy as your what your movies and all portray on a
I'm
day-to-day
curious to
basis.
know, like, I'm really curious to know because I think that that hashtag is still somewhere alive in me because I remember taking a trip to Paris and
Mhm.
Germany, and we went, like that traveling through the train, etc. So I still have that dream in me. So how would you like argue that? Because you've lived, right?
Yeah,
It's
well,
been
once you once you line up for 4 hours in a government office where nobody speaks your language, right? That
oh
dream is
well.
gonna, that reality is gonna kick in real quick. But also, if you really think about it, right? What happens when you travel for, say, that a limited amount of time? First of all,
Hmm.
most likely you've planned out everything, right? You know what your
Yeah.
days look like. And the entire idea of vacationing in Europe is very romanticized, also, right? So you end up, and to no fault of, I'm not trying to point finger. I mean, if I was doing a Euro trip, I would do also the same things. I'd go to Paris, I'd see the Eiffel Tower, I'd want to see
Yeah.
the important landmarks that I heard so much about. Then I want to go see it, and whether it lives up to my expectation or not. Either way, the experience is romanticized because of that. But living here,
Hmm.
first things first, I have not been to France yet. I haven't been to Italy yet. And I've been in
Hmm.
Europe for the last 2.5 years now. I've not been to any of these places yet.
Oh
I
wow.
barely travel. And with the corona, I can't travel also.
Yes.
So,
Oh.
but there are perks to, there are obviously perks to
Oh
living here.
yeah.
If you enjoy culture, you'll enjoy um, the European way of life. Uh,
Hmm.
it's beautiful, and you really learn to appreciate the slower pace that most of these European countries have. But what
Hmm.
was it like for you going from India all the way to Canada? A very very original choice for a Punjabi, if I may say so myself.
Oh well, it was more of it wasn't really a choice for us. I know that my husband and I we had been wanting to go move out of India, but then I think we had somewhere given up that thought, and it just happened. Like when you expected the least. So we took our chances, and
Mhm.
then I think for us it was a little different because we both came with jobs
Right, right,
and to have to find out a job here is difficult, like my husband still did, but I was with the same company. I took an internal transfer, but I
hmm,
think I had other challenges, like when people met me, they said, oh, you don't have to go through what we went through, many years ago, because oh, we
right.
didn't have any jobs, we didn't have any money, etc. But even if you have the job and the money, the struggle is still real. I had major health issues, when I
Mhm.
moved here. I did not know that I, at some point, would turn vegan because
Oh,
of those
are you
health
vegan?
issues. Yeah, I'm a forced vegan now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I can't have dairy, I can't have animal products, and I did not know what were those intolerances because back in India it's very unheard of, right?
Right. You
So I
have a
had
cup
my
of heavy milk tea in the
oh, you
morning.
wake up with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so but I'm really liking it. I think for me, in short, it took me 3 years to realize the benefits
Hmm.
versus when people I think hats off to those people. I have friends who move here and they love it from day one. I
Hmm.
hated it from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like totally, but I think you do discover eventually, like the benefits outweigh the cons.
Right.
So yeah, still in that discovery phase, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so what was it that what's the first striking thing about, like,
Hmm.
once you moved, what's the first thing that
Yeah.
struck you about, say, Canada? Now, the obvious ones will obviously be how clean and how everything is so
Yeah.
well put together.
Oh,
But
yeah.
was there something you didn't expect once you moved?
Yeah, I think you really like it. Like we were talking about traveling and why we all love traveling and love doing all those things ourselves when we are on a vacation. But then suddenly, when you come here, I think what jumped out to me was the whole self-service culture. You know how we're so much
Yeah,
used to help back in India. We used to people doing things for us. But
people
when you
filling
come
petrol
here,
for you, which
oh man,
which is not
yeah.
something I thought I'd have to learn.
Forgotten. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, there would be people like who fill up your gas tank, and here
Yeah.
it's like freezing -30, and then you still have to get out and
Uh-huh.
fill gas. Yeah, from that to even ordering food. It is. I don't know how it's in Europe, Gotham, but then over here it's really fast in North America. Like you go up to a fast food station and then you have to like within 20 seconds tell them everything.
Oh,
So
wow.
barring the language, like it's really fast paced. i think
Uh-huh.
i think that's what it was good and bad in a way. Bad because for people who don't adapt, they struggle. But people who do, I think you start to become like the locals.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like, yeah, doing the DIY, do it yourself culture is, it takes the longest time to get used to.
Very interesting. Something very interesting that you said, and I've observed a lot over here
Hmm.
with my time. So when I came to the university, in my cohort, there were about 20 to 30 Indians, and
Hmm.
I saw a lot of them were very different people when they were around Indians versus when they were with the foreigners or Europeans or anyone apart from
Yeah.
India. But they would change as a person to sort of adapt to the other person's way of life, or adapt so that they could fit in better. And that always
Hmm.
uh, not surprised me. I mean, I get it. I get why people do that. It's like a
Hmm.
defense mechanism, right?
Yeah.
You're out of your comfort zone, and you suddenly change yourself because you want to fit in. But it also makes me feel that's not your authentic self, right? That's not who you
Yeah.
really are as a person.
Yeah.
Or you forego
That
your previous identity and you become this person, right?
I think that's a choice you make, right? Because I feel like for me, I will always be thinking of back home, and it's a mix. So you pick and you choose. I have friends who have kids who have a really hard time bringing up their kids because they do not know who to listen to, whether to follow the Indian, the tried and tested route that we've been brought up with,
Hmm.
or look at the more American ways of raising your children. So I think and then again, I met so many people here who had moved many years ago, and then they told us, oh, to still date, we think of going back.
Hmm.
And I was like, really? We are just like 3 years old here in the new country, and we have that thought. You'll always have that option of going back. But
Right,
I feel like you have to adapt to a level that you want to, right?
right,
And then use a mixed bag of because you don't really change who you are as a person, right? Like I'll always be an Indian at heart.
of course. Something I've thought about a lot as well, and something I've observed with my like growing up in the Middle East. Somehow you
Hmm.
find that the people who live there, say the Indians who live there, sometimes tend to be a lot more conservative than the Indians who live in India. And I think
Hmm.
that's them sort of just holding on to, these are my values, this is my culture, and they impose that on the children. Have you
Hmm.
seen this? I mean, I saw this a lot while growing up, but
Yeah.
have you noticed something like this?
have, I think, not the place where we live, but there are the whole of North America, Canada has ghettos. Like you
Uh-huh.
have this Indian community living in that one area,
Uh-huh.
and it's your choice whether you want to live there or not. So there is an area here as well there, which is like a huge population of the Punjabi people you were speaking about
Is it the
in the beginning.
is it the fabled mini Punjab in Canada?
Yeah, oh yeah, it is. I'm not gonna take names on your podcast, but yeah, it is. Yeah,
But how big
so
are we
that
talking when you talk about these ghettos? How big?
it's
How many
a
houses
it's
are
a
we in?
whole city. It's a whole city dedicated,
Wow.
like occupied by these people. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's good and bad both, because you go there to get an authentic taste of India,
Hmm.
but at the same time, those are the people who moved back in the 70s, and in their head, India is still a land of snake charmers.
Right.
So and that's hard to change.
Right. Yeah.
So I feel like people who are moving now, with a lot more education, a lot more opportunities, I think they still have that open mindset versus the conservative that you were talking about.
Right.
Yeah, and that's right. That's, again, as you said, could be a defense mechanism to not let their children be impacted by that. Let them have some of their values.
Yeah. It's it's very interesting. All these people who moved back in the 70s
Hmm.
have never I mean, at some point you decide, okay, I'm not going back, right?
Yeah.
And then you think it makes sense for them to make like a maybe pilgrimage is too strong a word, but like still try to come back, hold on to those roots. So once you move, you moved. What does it matter whether you're brown or black or white? Once you've grown up
Hmm.
in another land,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
do you owe your ancestral motherland those ties, or do you owe it to anyone to go back?
I don't know. I think for visiting, yes, they might. But people growing up here who have Indian parents have a very different mindset. Like they're no different. They just look brown, but they still have the white mindset, because um, they've gone to these schools. They don't know the India we know. So, and I feel like for them it totally depends on the kind of household that you live in, because at times you get so torn between, like I said, right, like the bringing the Indian values that they have to challenge that, and the open mindset that they have. So I think they have a lot more to struggle with than we do.
Hmm, that is true. You mentioned that you get a authentic taste of India when you go to these ghettos. So
Hmm.
brings me up. What about the food? How has the food been in once you've
Hmm.
moved,
I'm not much of a foodie, but yeah,
especially
I
since you
think
became
it's.
vegan?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I know we used to work in a food company, but I think you're the more foodie type than me.
Oh, major.
Um, but my husband, being a Punjabi husband, he loves food, of
Did he?
course.
By the way, did he make the switch to veganism, or did
Oh
he?
no, you think not at all. He doesn't even come near my vegan ingredients. He's like, oh, it
I
has to
don't
have
blame him.
meat in it.
I don't blame him.
Yeah, of course you don't.
But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
but it's good.
yeah.
The food scene is different than it is in India. I think it's more the Canada, Toronto side is. I won't say as good as Delhi food, or as good as the
Right,
food that you would get, but yeah, you have those different state, right? Like India is so diverse. You have
right,
Kerala
right.
food, you have Hyderabad food, you
You have
have.
Kerala food? Wow.
Oh yeah, yeah. You have these. You have these chains. So yeah, I think Canada has a lot more of. Um, you would not miss India being here when if you love food.
Wow. And what about, and I'm sure festivities as well, right? The
Hmm.
Holi, Diwali, and all must still be celebrated quite,
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
yeah.
It is. In fact, Diwali is also an optional holiday here
Oh,
in
wow.
Canada.
That's
Yeah.
the thing with Europe. You don't
Mm-hmm.
get that. Like, at least over there, you have
Mm,
a community big enough to
yeah.
celebrate, have this. Madrid, in Spain, the Indian community is minuscule.
Really.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
it's tiny. In all of Europe, I'd say you'd have more Indians concentrated towards Germany. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
when UK, and UK is not part of Europe, but I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
over there for sure, a
Yeah.
lot more. But other parts of Europe are more sparse. And
And it's tough, right? Like when you have very little of that community,
very tough
you
to,
that's
yeah.
yeah.
So I went back home
Hmm.
last month after what, 2.5 years of
Oh
staying
wow.
staying outside. I went back to India. But
Hmm.
something when's the last time you went, by the way? When's the last time you went in India?
I think 2 years ago too, into 2019
Oh, so pretty
was when
much
I went. Yeah.
yeah. So you know what I'm talking about, right? It's been a while,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
before that, when you went, it had been a year, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I noticed something when I went back this time.
Hmm.
I remember when I left India and I
Hmm.
came, I was kind of done. I had reached like that saturation point where I decided I don't want to stay here anymore. But
Yeah.
once I got here, I obviously was romanticizing a lot of my experiences there, places there, and things there in my
Hmm.
head because I was obviously homesick to a large extent.
Yeah.
But when I
Yeah.
went back this time, all of it came back to me, and I realized I kind of made the right decision to move on because this place was
Mm.
not. I don't feel that pull to come back. Do you feel that? Do you think? Do
Oh
you see
yeah.
yourself going back?
Um, I really love that idea of going back. I
Hmm.
think, but when my husband gives me a reality check, I'm like, no, I'm not going to go back because I think you are used to like I think cognitively you're wired now to live here because you become used to that fast paced life. I have become used to that. I can't wait for a maid to come and clean my house. I have become used to doing it myself.
Uh-huh.
So when I went back to India, I think I really I went for a brief period. It was a wedding. So of course, when you go for a wedding, especially an Indian wedding, was huge. But
Uh-huh.
then when you think of that as a permanent setting, I don't think so, because the move fatigue, right? Like you've moved countries, you're at a
Yeah.
stage where you just want to settle down, right? um, you don't want to keep moving. I think
Right.
it's good. It's a good escape for for a week or two, but then we've moved on in a way, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get it. Do you see yourself moving elsewhere? Or is the same move fatigue, right? Once you're
I
settled in
think
a place,
so.
it's hard
I
to.
think so. Maybe not now because Canada, especially Toronto, is very cold. It
Mhm.
gets minus freezing temperatures in the
Oh, I'd
winter,
love
and
that.
it's
I would
oh,
absolutely
oh
love
yeah.
that.
See, it's the same idea of how I love the Euro tripping hashtags. You
Uh-huh.
love the winter hashtag,
You're
but when you
absolutely
have to
right,
shovel snow,
actually.
when you
Uh,
have to shovel like 10 centimeter of snow from your porch, you'll know
oh,
in
yeah,
in
that's
in a
true.
freezing temperature. Yeah, and you have to drive in that temperature. Oh god, it's crazy. I mean, it's good. The good thing about here is the seasons change like every
Hmm.
3-4 months. So it has its own beauty, like spring has its own beauty.
Right.
Fall has its own beauty. So the change is constant, which is great. But yeah, maybe to um, a warmer weather place, maybe.
Yeah, the Middle East,
Mhm.
for example.
Oh yeah, with a Canadian passport, yes.
Yeah. So
I'll be your king.
do you have a Canadian passport? Have you completely
um,
converted? Have
no,
you gone
we're
Akshay Kumar on
residents.
us? Huh?
Yeah, so in I think this year it's going to be this year, but
This year you're
for
gonna
now we're
Akshay Kumar
residents.
all of us. All right. I see how it is.
I don't know.
That's
It's a
like the
long
final
process.
straw, by the way. That's
Oh
it.
yeah.
Once you make that move, you're forgone. Well, I mean, it is, right? It's like the final. As long as you still hold an Indian passport, there's always hope. There's always like something in your back of your mind, like, yeah, yeah, I could go back.
Yeah.
But now,
Yeah, maybe because India doesn't allow like dual citizenship, right? So
well, it does, but it doesn't allow you to vote if you hold two passports. You
yeah.
lose certain rights. But you could technically hold
Mm.
two passports, I think. But who knows? It's not
Yeah.
like I would know too much about it.
Oh yeah.
So so uh, so Canada is say foreseeable long term for you. So I have a very probably lot more philosophical question when it comes to it.
Mm-hmm.
So you did mention that when you got there, you didn't really like the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
but now you'd call it home.
Yeah, because we bought a home, so yeah, maybe call it home
So
because of that.
what makes a place home?
Wow, that is indeed a philosophical question,
Hmm.
but that's a good question. I think I think two parts. One is Canada is very beautiful. I didn't know about it because, like I said, right, like when I moved here and my friends would call me and say, "Hey, must be such clean air." I'm like, really, I didn't notice. Like for years, I didn't notice all the benefits, all the beauty Canada has because we were settling in. I feel like, and this is the advice I give to all my budding friends who want to move abroad. I gave them a real picture because nobody gave me a real picture, when
Uh-huh.
I was moving. So I think what makes it home is when you're mentally at peace with where you are, if your work or your source of living gives you happiness,
Hmm.
I think that's what home is. Now, I never got that feeling while, I know I lived in Bangalore for 3 years in India, when I would be like, coming back home. It didn't feel like home, but I think the day we bought our home here, and the day we entered our home, it felt like, you own something in a foreign land. So I think that was a moment when we felt that, okay, this is home. And although people here are not very attached to like the place where they live, like they move every 3-4 years,
Uh-huh.
when the property prices go up, etc. But I think, yeah, it's for now it's home. Who knows
Oh, that's
what's going
actually
to happen in the next years.
that's actually very beautifully put. Like owning that bit of land, or owning that little
Hmm.
bit that you can call to yours, you call your own, does actually have a profound impact in you feeling at home, right? I can totally get
Yeah.
that. I uh, I mean, where I'm staying right now, I'm
Hmm.
only now starting to feel like, okay, this is where
Hmm.
I sit. Because for the last, before I moved to Barcelona and after I left Madrid, I spent 3 or 4 months living in Airbnbs. And I can tell you
Oh,
that was the most exhausting period of my life because it was just, because you
it's
never,
not your place.
it's not your place, you never settled. Like,
Yeah.
you're leaving in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So
Yeah.
just living out of a suitcase, and that's how I grew up as well. I spent
Hmm.
18 years shuttling between countries in the Middle East and
Wow.
never really feeling like home anywhere. Bangalore for the
Hmm.
longest time I did. But you didn't
Hmm.
enjoy your time in Bangalore, did you?
I did enjoy. I think I miss Bangalore the most now. I
Oh,
don't I don't miss
uh,
Delhi that much. I mean, I grew up in Delhi, but I think Bangalore too is, it could be a second home. Um, but I liked it. I think eventually I did. Maybe I think that's pattern with me, right? Like I hate a place and then I like it.
well, Vanita, that's all I have for today. That's all I put together. But thank you so much for taking this time. I'm really, really looking forward to reading your book. I'm gonna
Thank you.
keep like a regular check and to make sure that you actually finish it in less than 5 years. But really, thank you so much for taking it. And it's really nice to talk to someone who's had a similar experience as you have. I'm going through the same thing that
Hmm.
you've gone through, and it's always very nice to see that you're not alone in that. The way you feel about moving, living
Mm.
abroad, and having those. I don't know, just having that experience.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me. I think it was great chatting, like I said, right? No strings
Yeah,
attached.
no
It
strings
was it was
attached.
great. Yeah. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
I'm gonna stop recording, but please stay on so I can say goodbye properly.
Okay.